Hey, what's up guys? Tony here. Hopefully this video is coming out okay. I'm doing this with my phone in the garage. It's kind of late at night, but been getting some questions about my Mega Live setting. So just quickly want to show you guys how I set it up. Obviously, I'm not on the water, so I won't be able to show you specific details of what changes look like on the screen, but I can kind of give you a perspective of what to do, at least for settings on a Humminbird Solix 10. This is a Gen 1. I'm also going to show you some video from a few videos back when I was crappie fishing. I have a few recordings on here. You can kind of see the clarity and detail that I'm getting with the settings. So let's check it out. Now, of course, these settings and the way you navigate the menus differ than from the Helix. One second, guys. I got to plug in the transducer. I'm going to be realistic with you guys. It is a lot harder catching fish out of a kayak with live imaging versus a boat. Why? It's because we move around so much. The wind barely kicks up, the waves, it can really, I don't want to say distort the picture, it just makes it harder to find your lure. I'm not saying it can't be done, but that plays a big role in your settings. It plays a big role on your search for finding fish with Mega Live. I still have a lot to learn about it, what fish or what type of fish look like on the screen. That's what I have to learn. That's due to the time of year, the body of water you're fishing. I mean, you still have to fish like you normally would for bass. So hopefully what you see in those situations are bass. It's not like that all the time. It's not as easy as just going out and saying, hey, I can see fish, I'm gonna catch them. It's just not that easy. So I typically run in forward mode at 60 degrees. So that means on the actual transducer itself, that's 6 clicks from the downward position. Every click is 10 degrees. So if I was in the down position, obviously I'm looking straight down. And if I rotate the transducer 6 clicks, I'm at 60 degrees. That's the way I like it. Right now, my transducer is shooting straight down. This is the downward position. But if I wanted to go into the forward position at 60 degrees, like I said, each click is 10 degrees. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm 60. There's also a 40 degree mode. So I would go back 2. Now I'm at 40. There's other degrees as well, but 60 seems to be what I like when I'm searching. If I get right on top of something, maybe I'll want to rotate it down to a lesser degree to get a clear image. The color palette that I've chose is this green. Now typically on side imaging and down imaging, I like these color palettes like 2 or 3. That's what I'm used to. But for the Mega Live, I really like number 5. The green seems to show up really well in the middle of the day, and it's good at night as well. Obviously, we're not on the water. The Mega Live automatically disables itself when it realizes it's not in the water. Of course, you still are running power to it, but the pinging is disabled. Now, if we come over here to settings, you can see my last settings were, I had sensitivity at 15, contrast at -6, downrange at 12, forward range at 70. Now, if it's a calm day, I can run this forward range up to maybe 90 feet. Depending on what type of lure I'm throwing, depends on whether or not I'll see it at 90 feet on the screen. A lot of times when I cast a large lure and I'm scanning out 90 feet, you know, which I'm showing up here my distance, 40, 50, 60, and there's 70 right here, I'll see the lure hit the surface of the water. But sometimes after it sinks or whatever, you know, 10, 15 feet or 5 feet, it's hard to trace until it gets maybe between that 40 to 50, 55 foot range, which seems to be kind of the sweet spot on this unit. Now again, on a calmer day where your kayak's not bouncing up and down, you may see that lure fairly clear out at 90 feet. But for the most part, you guys know I'm on Lake Conroe. Lake Conroe stays pretty rough on the south end. It's very difficult most of the time, especially throwing something smaller, even a jerkbait. It's hard to see out at 90 feet. So I like to keep it around 70. As far as the downrange goes, I don't keep it on auto. It's on manual, and I adjust that accordingly depending on how deep of water I am. That's pretty self-explanatory. If I'm in 15 feet of water, I'll have this probably on 20. So that way my bottom is about a quarter of the screen up from the bottom. As far as dynamic contrast, okay, now this is where this can really help you. You see, I have it on high right now. That was because the last time I was using Mega Live, I was in more shallow water. When you're in shallower water, switching this over to high really helps clear up the screen. However, you have to play around with high or balance. Typically, I'm never in low. I'm either in balance mode or I'm in high. You have to play around with these settings because even if you're in shallow water and you switch to high, there is a possibility you may not can still see your lure the way you want to. So you may have to switch back to balanced and then play around with your contrast and your sensitivity. Now I'm going to start off by saying sensitivity obviously is important, but you can always start out around, I don't know, 7 or 8. Okay, if I was on the water, I could show you, but the more you turn your sensitivity up, the more your readings start to get blown out. So that green will start to turn white. And I like mine set where I just have the slightest bit of white in the signal. Now, as far as seeing the lure, that's where your contrast comes into play. The contrast has more of an effect on your settings than the sensitivity. Adjusting your contrast further down, which now with the new update goes all the way down to -10, that's the best way to see your lure. Cranking up the sensitivity, yes, obviously helps, but adjusting this contrast on your screen helps big time. Again, before you even get to all these settings, in a kayak, if it is rough out there, it's going to be difficult seeing your lure and making those casts in line with your transducer to see your lure every cast. It's not easy. I would suggest going out on a calm day and then play with these settings. So then you're ruling out all the motion of the water and all the stuff and interference that comes along with that. You're ruling that out. You can really get a great feeling of what you're doing with these settings. And that's pretty much it. I start with sensitivity. I get it where it's a little past blown out and then back it off. And then I play with the contrast until I can see my lure, I think, the best. Forward display, self-explanatory. I don't like my range auto. I like it on manual. I changed that. I think it's better. And forward range early in the morning before all the boats have gotten out or the jet skiers or, all the commotion has started on the lake. I may have this forward range sitting at 90. But after it gets a little rough out there, I dial it down so I can see my lure better. Of course, I'm not getting that distance, but I can still see brush piles and structure out at 90 feet. I just can't see my lure. So if I see a brush pile at 90 feet, I pedal up closer to it, maybe till 40 or 50 feet, a decent cast distance from the brush pile. Then I can see my lure. That's how I do that. Persistence mode. I haven't played around with it too much. I typically keep it off. All it is it basically is a history of what's moving on your screen. So if you got bait fish or, your fish, they're moving, it's supposed to aid in helping you know what direction they're traveling in or what their history is. It's basically tracking them. For me, it hasn't really played a part in helping me catch fish. I typically are finding fish that aren't moving at all, or they are moving, but I don't really need to know the direction. But that's up to you. That's something you could play around with. But for me, I just leave persistence off. And that's about it. There's not many settings to play with on this. Again, auto sensitivity is off because you are controlling your sensitivity. You're controlling the contrast, which contrast is the #1 thing to play around with. That's it. Your contrast and your forward range, and then go from there. Now that that's out of the way, I want to show you guys a recording from a few videos back again about I was crappie fishing. I was panning around, I was seeing a bunch of bait balls, and about 60 feet out, I thought I saw another bait ball, but it looked just a little bit different. It was hard to tell on the screen what it was. So I paddled up to it, and that bait ball, the bait within that bait ball kept getting bigger and bigger. Well, turns out it wasn't a bait ball, it was a school of crappie. So they were just out swimming around, not relating to anything, and I got right on top of them and caught a few. Okay, guys, As you can see, I'm in 15 feet of water, scanning out 60 feet, or about 65, 70, I guess. That right there is that school of crappie. As you can see, I'm panning. It's a pretty good school of them. You can barely see my line. Here comes my jig right here. But obviously, I'm not close enough to the school. Basically, you got to get right on top of them. It was a really light jig, so I couldn't really cast at them too well. So I would just try to get them right in front of me and pedal toward them. But again, there's nothing out here, nothing on the bottom. There's no trees. They were literally just in a school swimming around in a circle. Now you can see I must have cast it out a little bit. I'm coming down right on top of them there. But I could tell by the way they were reacting to it that they knew what it was. I had already pulled about 6 or 7 good-sized crappie out of this school, and they were getting pretty smart. And this was even after I had retied on a different type jig, different color. I do believe I get one to chase here shortly. I'm still pedaling toward them, as you can see. That's not the school moving. They're just pretty much staying in place. That's me moving my kayak over closer to them. There's one, just moved around fairly quick. There comes my jig right there. Jigging it right above them, and as you can see, they started disappearing. They were getting pretty smart. Sorry, my phone's having a hard time keeping the color. But earlier I was talking about that white line. See how it's pretty hot in here, but not out here. So depending on how far you're wanting to see your lure out, you got to play with that sensitivity. But you also got to play with that contrast. You can see a little bit of my line right there. There's my crappie jig. Crappie right below. There you go. I don't know if y'all saw that right there. That was my jig. That one fish went right after it. They were spooked. I wish I could have got one on the recording, actually reeling one up, but you guys get the idea. You can see this definitely, you see how big each individual signal is. But again, on some of the competitors, like maybe Garmin, you may could tell that this was a school of crappie at 70, 80, 90 feet out, but I couldn't. I thought this was a ball of shad, got closer to it and realized it wasn't. And this is after the update. So, honest truth, it's a great tool to have. Is it as good as Lowrance? Is it good as Garmin? I'll leave that up to you guys to say. Okay guys, well that's my settings and my take on the Humminbird Mega Live. If you do get this unit, number one, do the upgrade first. Do the software update. It's really easy. It does make a difference. Play around with your settings and just get out on the water and give it a shot. That's the best thing I can tell you. People's eyes are different and the way people fish are different. Your settings may differ than mine, but I believe what I've told you is a good starting point. If you guys have any other questions, leave them below. And thank you guys so much for watching. You guys take care and God bless. Come on.